You know, as a woman, I've pretty much made it my goal in life to never have to say these three words in this order, but I was wrong. Hey y'all, SnarkyJay cosplay here. So earlier this week we got episodes 4, 5, and 6, the second batch of episodes from Andor Season 2. And last week, not only was there a ton of controversy, but I was also really unimpressed with the first 3 episodes of the series. And in my video covering the first 3 episodes, I acknowledged that I loved the first season and that I was going to continue with the second season in hopes that it would get better because I hadn't written off Andor entirely, because Andor is a story that I'm pretty much invested in and I really wanted to see how it went. And my disappointment from the first 3 episodes is pretty much gone with the next 3. Episodes 4, 5, and 6 for me are a return to form from the original season of Andor. And granted, a lot of people are still not gonna enjoy that because a lot of people just don't like Andor in general. This is not your run-of-the-mill sci-fi, Star Wars, fantasy adventure so a lot of people tend to find it boring. For the folks that were complaining that there weren't enough aliens, there are plenty in episodes 4, 5, and 6, but you're still not gonna see swashbuckling smugglers and fun and lightsaber battles. Now these, again, are some long-ass episodes. It's 3 hours, each episode is an hour long, so it's 3 hours of continuous viewing, and last week that felt like torture. This week, I was on the edge of my seat for most of it. So I'm not gonna sit here and recap every single moment from each of the episodes because that might take me an hour in and of itself, and I know you guys would get tired of me. So I kind of just want to go episode by episode, touch on some major points and some bits that I thought were important to mention. There will be spoilers for episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Andor moving forward if you care about that. If not, stick around, let's talk. Episode 4 introduces us to the new time that we're in. It takes place a year after episodes 1, 2, and 3, which tends to make things just a little bit confusing because it always feels like that first episode of each batch is kind of going to be spent catching up with these characters, which isn't a format that I'm crazy about. But what I like about episode 4 is that it spends a lot of time actually showing you what the dynamic between Cassian and Bix actually is. We all know Bix has suffered a lot at the hands of the Empire, and yet she's still less abrasive about it than Cassian is. The ongoing battle between these two in this episode is that Cassian has apparently killed an Imperial soldier that was apparently just a boy, and he didn't kill him because he had to. He killed him because he saw Bix's face. So while Cassian is still treading this line between brutal and honorable, we see that Bix has kind of fallen on some hard times in that she's still not able to sleep from all the torture that she suffered at the hands of the Empire. We now know that she probably also carries some trauma from that incredibly controversial scene in episode 3, and we watch her at one point actively taking drugs to try and relax, which I think is the first time we see somebody in Star Wars do this. Again, this is something that is going to be kind of bothersome to people that want Star Wars to stay Star Wars, but in my opinion, all these departures just make the show more of an adult theme, and like I said in my last video, if Disney does a good job of branding, I'm okay with Andor being a grittier, way more grounded version of Star Wars if it's accomplished successfully. Now, the real meat and potatoes of this episode, and the character that is becoming honestly more interesting to me than Cassian Andor himself, is Syril Karn. He's such an absolute sycophant for the Empire. And yet in this episode, we see he's working on Gorman now, and he's kind of leaning into this arc with these rebels on Gorman, and I realized that I would make a really bad spy because he's obviously a double agent. To the audience, we know he's a double agent. He lies to the Gormans, who are now worried that the Empire is going to be building some sort of weapons facility on the site of a massacre of like 500 unarmed Gormans by Grand Moff Tarkin like 20 years ago. The Empire is doing a whole lot of shady shit on Gorman, and Syril Karn is mixed up right at the root of this stuff, which is why I think I would make a bad spy, because I'm kind of like, yeah, but he seems so genuine. He's not. He's always reporting back to the Empire because that's where his loyalties lie. However, the highlight for me is that we finally got to see Saw Gerrera. Saw Gerrera to me was like the unsung hero of Rogue One because he's absolutely unhinged by the time we meet him in that movie, and these episodes kind of give us a little more of an in to his character. I personally think it's such a phenomenal performance by Forrest Whitaker. He's a fascinating character, and he honestly is just another flavor of the kind of people that start to rise up during these rebellions, and we're going to talk about that a little little bit more in just a few minutes with episode 5. Besides that, of course, we have Mon Mothma handling her own business, but the important bit is that by the end of episode 4, Luthen has now decided to send Cassian to Gorman. That's a lot of names that end in Luthen, Cassian, Gorman. I'm gonna start getting stuck here. But this mission to Gorman actually ends up revealing quite a bit in episode 5. Episode 5 and episode 6, like I said, are both way stronger than episode 4, and I'm kind of feeling like that might be the theme, because when you consider the fact that they are gonna have to spend a big chunk of the first episode of each batch showing you, like, hey, it's been a year, 2 years, what have you, and show you this is what happened, there's always a little bit of catching up to do, which is kind of just the format of the show, but it does make the first episode always a little bit weaker. So episode 5 once again has me feeling like an absolute nitwit. I'm too naive to be an Imperial because the ISB comes and raids this office on Gorman that Cyril Karn works in. And he's throwing a tantrum and he's telling his people, oh my god, there's a listening device in here, and the ISB, this is ridiculous. He's siding with the rebels, and the whole time, again, he's still actively reporting back to Dedra Meero, who I'm pretty sure he still has a relationship with. These two are so weird. And the Empire. He has no love for these Gorman rebels, and in fact, he's only ingratiating himself with them to get information. And the whole time, honestly, I would think it was really stupid if he swung in the other direction and suddenly sided with the rebels. I would think that that was a terrible move. I like this guy being a sycophantic agent of the Empire trying to work his way up, but I also just feel like, yeah, but what if he meant it? What if he is a nice guy? It's just... Anyway, episode 5 starts to peel back some of the layers on Cassian Andor, and I tend to see a lot of complaints about Diego Luna's performance as the character. Do I think he's the most interesting, emotive actor in the world? No, but I also think that it's part of Cassian Andor's character, so I'm not entirely bothered by this. And what I do like is that in this episode, we get a different flavor of Cassian. When Luthen sends him to Gorman in disguise, he's playing a fashion designer, so we actually get to see him look a lot spiffier. He's put on this blue coat. He definitely puts on a different performance, and we can see that he's not opposed to dabbling in espionage. And what I like about this whole arc with Cassian in this episode is that we see that, yes, he is committed to this rebellion, but he's also very much aware when something is a lost cause. While he's on Gorman, he gets some information about this little Gorman uprising that happens there, and he basically comes to the conclusion that they are way over their heads. Anything the Empire does here, they're trying to stir discontent and basically create a situation where they can blame something on the Gormans and come in and do what the Empire does best, which is usually commit some sort of atrocity and then say, yeah, but you made me do that. Sounds like my ex. Anyway, Luthen continues to be my favorite character in the show, and I love what starts happening here. So Davo Skulden, it's so hard for me to remember the names in this show, but Davo Skulden is the guy who is the father of the kid that Mon Mothma's daughter just married. And he's got this weird art collection, some of the pieces he's bought from Luthen, and he's just discovered that this one piece is actually a forgery. And that piece is where Luthen and Clea planted listening devices on it, which means that if they don't get those listening devices off, they're going to be totally caught. And that literally, in episode 6, had me on the edge of my seat. I had not been that enthused by anything Star Wars did in, like, God, a really long time. So this, chef's kiss, this whole storyline. What I especially want to highlight in episode 5 is that episode 5 is sort of a masterclass in exposing the different kind of people that exist during a rebellion. So for instance, Luthen goes to see Bix, and he already knows that she's doing drugs. He can tell that she is just in a really bad state. And he goes and sees her while Cassian is out, purely because he knows that I think Bix is kind of his only weakness, and he would probably not be entirely dedicated to the cause if something happened to Bix. And there's a lot of different characters in a rebellion like this. You have guys like Cassian who pretty much have their own interests, but get wrapped up in a rebellion because the greater message and the greater goal of the rebellion is important to him, and we know that he's willing to give his life for it, and he will give his life for it, but he's still a person with his own interests at heart, and that's going to come up a little more in episode 6. But then we have guys like Luthen, who are willing to play both sides, right? He's always got somebody else to send to do a mission for him because he has to stay on the up and up enough to deal with people that are higher class, like Mon Mothma and other characters like that. You have Mon Mothma, who is playing the game but politically, because she can't go and bomb something, but she knows that what she can do is try and pull favor with the governments that she's involved with. You also have people like Bix, who comes across like an idealist that has been continuously made a victim at the hands of the Empire. And what I think is really important, and why they gave us that attempted assault scene in the first 3 episodes, is that we need to see a character who is an idealist and is really wrapped up in this fight. We see her get knocked down and broken down by this power that she wants to see destroyed. And what we're watching is a victim taking their power back. Male, female, it doesn't matter. It's the strength in seeing a victim rise up and refuse to be a victim and instead move forward and do something awesome. And then we have guys like Saw Gerrera. He is the perfect blend of interesting and unhinged. And what I love about episode 5 is it exposes a lot more of Saw Gerrera. I don't know how much you remember about season 1, but there's a character named Willman who I honestly did not remember at all. But Willman is working for Saw Gerrera building a Rhydonium bomb, and we come to find that Saw Gerrera is no stranger to working with Rhydonium, and most likely his insanity that is getting even worse, and also that lung issue that leaves him unable to breathe on his own by the time we encounter him in Rogue One, is all credited to his constant inhalation of Rhydonium. And Forrest Whitaker's performance is so powerful, but the dialogue in and of itself, he's got this monologue in it that really shows you how people can fall for these extremists in situations like this, because he is nuts, and he actually acknowledges that he's nuts, which I think makes him that much more likable. And yet he has this rousing speech. It's this fanaticism. It's this outraged, insane, unhinged dedication to this cause, that as he gives this speech and then encourages Willman to inhale Rhydonium with him, I honestly considered going and grabbing a can of spray paint and huffing it in his honor. I'm kidding. I do enough armor work that I inhale spray paint without having to huff it on purpose, don't worry. For legal reasons, that's a joke. So moving on to episode 6, that's when all these different storylines kind of come to a head. So remember like 3 to 4 minutes ago when I went off in an entire rant about how there were different characters and elements in this rebellion? Well, we really get a clear picture of this when Luthen and Cassian finally meet up when Cassian leaves Gorman. Cassian does not seem too keen on getting involved in the Gorman front because I think he basically considers them a lost cause. He thinks they're too green, they're in way over their heads. But Luthen is kind of like an I see a means to an end kind of guy. And he basically calls out Cassian and is like, you know what, I think you're just too focused on getting back to Bix right now to see the bigger picture. And Cassian has this great moment where he tells him we're not droids. And that's, again, that dichotomy where these two people are both committed to the same cause, but one guy is willing to do it by any means necessary because he lives a different life. Luthen is very much involved in the planning and espionage aspect, but we don't see him on the ground with a gun having to do anything himself. Cassian is that guy. Cassian is on the ground taking care of business. And I think that we've already seen him lose enough that he's more desperate to cling to this one person that he has. Yes, he's committed to his cause, but not enough to want to sacrifice this one person, this one good thing that we have. And he's more willing to cling to that humanity. We're not droids. He's not a robot in this battle, even though Luthen is way more willing to look at people beneath him as such. Another thing that I like about episode 6 is that it kind of corrects my complaints about episode 1, if I remember correctly. So last week I mentioned that some rebels were basically playing rock, paper, scissors to make a decision, and I thought it was absolute bullshit. And some people pointed out that this was supposed to highlight the disorganized nature of this rebellion, but to me it seemed childish. I think there's ways to make things look disorganized without reverting to being absolutely juvenile. And in this episode, we once again get more scenes that show how absolutely incompetent and disorganized the rebellion could be, but it actually is played to some really high stakes. I did not remember the two characters, Cinta and Vel, particularly well from season 1, but when they came up in season 2, I did remember them. They are the female couple, and they are rebels, and they haven't seen each other in some time, and they have this sort of tension-filled reunion. They are there on Gorman to help Gorman rebels attack this convoy, because the Gorman rebels know that the Empire is up to something. They're building some sort of structure, there's a lot of movement, but they don't actually know what's going on. They attack this convoy, and things are sort of going well until one of the rebels gets into a fight with another, and a shot is fired, and one of the rebels is killed, and that is Cinta. And this is exactly what the Empire wants. If they can paint these Gorman rebels as terrorists, well, then they can basically do whatever they want, because now it looks justified. Now they have reasons to make a move on Gorman, and this is what they've been trying to accomplish for the past, 5 episodes. The real tension in this episode, to me, plays like a game of cat and mouse. So Mon Mothma and Luthen both attend this party with Davo Skulden, and he's showing off his art collection. And we have none other than Krennic there, who, what a performance. I love him. He's one of those bad guys that you really love to hate. And he and Mon Mothma trade digs, and that's another thing that I really liked about this episode, is that you've got guys like Cassian who are willing to trade gunshots, but Mon Mothma has to play the game in a really different way. And so she plays with these political digs, and she takes them as well as she can give them. But there's a lot of tension because we know how the Empire reacts to things, so it's kind of like, I don't really know that I would be snarky with the Empire, because they might just blow up my house. So while Mon Mothma and Krennic are basically trading digs, we have what feels like 15 minutes of Lonnie, which is that Imperial insider that works with Luthen, and Clea, Luthen's assistant, trying to pull off the listening device. And it's literally forever of them trying to twist this thing off, all while the party is going on around them. And so Clea's still trying to smile while she's trying to do this and I was literally on the edge of my seat. And the worst part is that goes to show you that when a show is well done, it doesn't matter that you know the stakes. I know how this is going to end. I know that all roads lead to Rogue One. All roads lead to the destruction of the Death Star. But the fact of the matter is that there's all these little events that happen in a rebellion that you don't know exactly how everything is going to turn out. And if the writing is good and the pacing is good, which I didn't think either were happening with the first 3 episodes. Now they've resolved that, and now this is something that feels as good to watch and experience as season 1. And what I love about episode 6 is it ends on this fantastic note. Cassian and Bix actually blow up one of these Imperial buildings, and they have their cool guys don't turn around to look at explosion moments. But I talked about Bix earlier, and Bix being the symbol of a victim taking their power back. And the guy that tortured her, Gorst, she manages to hook him up to the same equipment that he tortured her with, and she leaves. She leaves him in that building that they destroy. And that's the beautiful part, is that it really is this poetic thing. These are now 2 Imperials, 2 symbols of Imperial overreach, of Imperial cruelty, of the Empire treating the people that they subjugate like they're inhuman, worse than animals even. The guy who tried to assault her, and now Gorst, who tortured her and basically took her sanity for almost an entire season. Both of these people have now fallen prey to this person. And I know there's gonna be complaints about, oh, this is girl power, the Force is female. It's not about that. It's not about Bix being a woman, hear me roar. It's not about that. This is somebody who could represent anybody being subjugated by essentially an evil regime built on cruelty and the iron fist of absolute power. It could happen to anybody in a situation like this. And to me, it really is powerful to watch. Episodes 4, 5, and 6 to me were a total return to form. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 really turned me off, but my love for season 1 kept me interested. And I think that that's just how this is gonna play out. Sometimes it takes looking at these episodes in the grand scheme of things. Unfortunately, my task as a reviewer, I just review things as they happen. I give my thoughts as they happen. And if I had written off Andor entirely, I would have been honest about it. I was close to it, but at the end of the day, like I said, I loved the first season of Andor, and I feel like These next 3 episodes, if you were disappointed with the first 3 and you haven't seen 4, 5, and 6, go back and give them a chance. They are way closer to the original, to season 1 of Andor, than episodes 1, 2, and 3 were. If you didn't like season 1 of Andor, and you didn't like episodes 1, 2, and 3, you are not gonna like 4, 5, and 6, because unfortunately, it is more of the same. You're never gonna get the lightsaber fights and the explosions and the fun characters. There's aliens. For the people that complain that there were no aliens, there's aliens. You're welcome. I personally am super satisfied with it. I really enjoy what's happening. I'm hoping that this theme now, established in 4, 5, and 6, continues with the next few episodes, because I really enjoyed these, and spending 3 hours of my day watching it, I wanted more at the end, and that's saying something, because I have plenty of other to do. And that's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more SnarkyJay, be sure to check me out on Instagram, and if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and cosplay content. This month's featured sets are Cindy from Final Fantasy XV, Tifa from Final Fantasy VII, and Megara from Disney's Hercules. You won't want to miss those. I'll add links to all of those in the description below, and let me know your thoughts on episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Andor in the comments below.